So I had a great question the other day from Raul about what tools we use for productivity. And I want to begin this with a disclaimer that I'm going to mention some software, but a thing I cannot emphasize enough. And not just because, of course, the focus being on life's better in co-op and teaming up and all that. But the ultimate tool for productivity is always going to be talking to each other. It's always going to be communication between people. It helps us be more effective. It helps our peers be more effective. Helps us use our time more efficiently. Helps us stay on task. Any of these software programs we're talking about are at best a facilitator for us talking to each other. I think sometimes people try to lean on software as though it's going to avoid the need to communicate. It should ease and support communication. It might focus communication, but the communication is still ultimately where the action's happening. Kind of like, just by way of example, a textbook is kind of where learning's happening, but it's really the way that the textbook is a facilitating device between the teachers and the students. So anywho, disclaimer aside, when we're trying to schedule meetings across different time zones, I have found winisgood.net a good resource for that. I used to try to use doodle polls. I used to try to use Win2Meets and other kind of options. I find Win is Good is great for international scheduling, which, of course, a lot of the teams we have in GameDev Club. Now, speaking of which, when you're doing that on Win is Good, it is important to note that because daylight savings time is super silly and a terrible idea, daylight savings time, just to be clear, it is enforced in some areas and not others. Entire countries start... There's countries that do it, that start and stop it at different times on the calendar. There's states and regions and cities within countries that do it, that they don't do it. So for this reason, when you're using Win is Good, I cannot urge enough. Don't put things, and make it clear in your description. They should really make this clear on the site. Don't put things like PST, because maybe you're supposed to mean PDT. Don't put things like EDT if it's supposed to maybe be EST. Pick the city that corresponds to it, and then it should be able to auto-detect whether or not it's actually supposed to be one of those. Bit of a gripe, but I've had meetings not work because people would put PST thinking that that's their time zone, and it's part of the year you're in PDT. Those are different time zones. So fortunately, it does give you the option of using the city setting. Now, speaking of which, for time zone conversions, which again, I'm first focusing on communications between people because really that is where the productivity comes from. The timezoneconverter.com is also a nice way to check. If you just especially have like one important meeting that you're trying to schedule with one other person, or you want to double check you're not going to be missing your appointment, the time zone converter I actually prefer to Win is Good. I find they're even better about being able to account for the silliness around daylight savings and offsets, and also the interface there is just so straightforward. You pick the cities nearby, it tells you what the deal is. In terms of communications ongoing, we use Slack for private internal group communications. So essentially, a company, or in our case in GameDev Club, we use a Slack for private stuff. And for outward-facing things, for kind of general public, for a larger group of people who aren't as tightly connected, but you still, in that case, need different kind of moderation tools and options and patterns in place, Discord becomes a better option for that. Did you catch that? Right? So Slack's better for internal, more private groups, and Discord better for kind of more open things in terms of the way it handles invites, the way it handles per person moderation and role assignment and access and that kind of thing. We've also, of course, GitHub is great for collaboration on projects where you got code and assets and things changing ways. Now, I think you might have recently seen, semi-recently, Jason Rower was having some real big challenges of GitHub had just straight up, after like he had a 5-year project with an enormous code base and a ton of changes and history of change requests and other stuff, just vanished from underneath him because GitHub just yanked it. If I'm not mistaken, GitHub's now connected to Microsoft, which means that stuff like that is just going to happen. That said, no platform is perfect. It's still, with all its flaws and frustrations, currently for many people a better arrangement than the alternatives, but it's a thing to be aware of and cautious of just because your stuff's on GitHub does not mean that it is yours or that they can't just yank it away from you. So be aware. That said, GitHub, great for, obviously, code collaboration. Trello is what I used to use and what I currently still feel slightly locked into. I'm kind of looking at options to migrate to. I really strongly at this point advise. I used to really beat the drum for Trello. At this point, if you're looking for something like Trello, I really recommend it. It's literally what I would do right now if I was starting fresh. Google alternatives to Trello. Google what to use instead of Trello. Trello is getting worse. Trello has been going downhill. Trello briefly was going in a good direction. Atlassian, whoever the Jira people, I think they acquired it. Anyway, they've done some really dumb things lately, Trello, where it's just, I don't even want to go into detail here. Basically, they've got a really bad arrangement. Their support's really bad. Move away from Trello is my long-term tip there. Of it's only going to get worse, not better on Trello. But that said, something like Trello. So again, find alternatives to Trello, of which, fortunately, there are a myriad of alternatives at this point that have pretty comparable systems of columns and cards and ability to have a team of collaborators connected to it. So you'll find plenty of alternatives, but find yourself a good alternative to Trello, because I do like tools like Trello. And part of what I used to like it, the app was helpful. There's other programs out there with apps or a decent web interface to it that do the same kind of Kanban board sort of arrangement. I've been really enjoying Workflowy personally. I don't know about its collaborative potential, but Workflowy for me has been really helpful for organizing when I'm working on material kind of background, sort of a mixture of to-do lists, sort of a mixture of, because, you know, I wear a bunch of hats, right? I run GAM Keto Club. I also am on the board for IGD Los Angeles. I'm also IndieCade's alumni organizer. I also do other things in my life, it turns out. And so I can kind of keep different things that are different channels in that way, in a really nice way. Workflowy, what it is a essentially recursive outline program where you can easily drag chunks around. When I was working on my audiobook material and things, I found it a nice way to draft and reorganize that material. You can kind of zoom in on layers and zoom out from it. It has a decent mobile app, but also an imperfect mobile app, to the point that until they fix the mobile app, it's really kind of a laptop-only arrangement. And it's also paid but affordable to get past the a usage limit of like 100 changes a week or something like that. So that's Workflowy. We mentioned Slack. We mentioned... Oh, Zoom is where we do our group video calls. That has just knocked the socks off the alternatives in terms of when Game Keto Club was first starting, we first considered, should we try Google Hangouts? Should we try a Skype, Zoom, Skype group call? We tried join.me or something like that. And what I like about Zoom.us is, one, we can fit like 25 cameras per screen, up to 49, I think, maybe video calls in on a single meeting. And that's nice. The way that's working right is it's actually piping everyone's video back through to the back end, combining all the videos on one server side, rebroadcasting all the videos and audios. But what that enables to happen is that you don't wind up with these sort of hang-ups. Either a limit of like 10 videos at once is what a lot of these other network platform group chat things limit to. And also that the frame rate, the quality, and so on is pretty decent for Zoom.us. We found it better suited to showing gameplay video being screen shared for, say, a weekly update meeting, versus what Join.me just did not have the horsepower for that, nor did Skype, nor did Google Hangouts back at the time, which I'm not even sure if that's still around. But yeah, so those are the main productivity tools. Again, for me, often means communication tools. Because the productivity tools will not mean you don't need each other. It will not mean you don't need to coordinate. The productivity tools are going to be things that help you coordinate with other people. And help you clarify your thoughts to then communicate with other people. Because really, at the end of the day, what's going to make things happen is your brain connecting productively with their brain, your actions being in useful, collaborative, compatible directions, and that's going to come from talking to each other. So at the end of the day, the ultimate productivity tool is your mouth and your ears. Maybe your ears and then your mouth in that order. But yeah, talk to each other. Don't try to get tools to make you not need to talk to each other. Look for tools that help you talk to each other, and then talk to each other. Because you know why? Life is better in co-op. I'll see you tomorrow.